Hello, this is Jamie Magritte. Welcome to Jamie's Craft Table. Today I'm going to show you how I made this card. I don't know if you can see the embossing. There you go. Okay, and I used Snowman Magic and the Stripes and Splatters 3D embossing folders. I just purchased this one. Just got it this week. And then I'm using the silver and gold 6x6 specialty paper. Okay. I'm going to be using Real Red, Basic Gray, Evening Evergreen, and Memento for my sentiment. And I'm using this stamp, this little birdie, this one here, and then this sentiment here. On this one I stamped the whole thing and I just cut it off after I stamped it. With this time I did stamp surgery and removed this season from it. I just wanted the thinking of you. You can use a post-it note and block it off, but I just did the stamp surgery. Okay, so let's get started here. Oops, what did I do? There we go. Okay, for my pieces, oh, and I also brought in the die for this little birdie from the matching dies. Oh, which I put away. I did that at the last minute, so I forgot snowman dies. All right, I liked it without the popped up, but then when I popped it up on there, it kind of looked really nice, so I left it. Okay, so we need a scrap to stamp our birdie on. We have a 3 1/4 by 5 1/4 piece of white that we're going to run through these splatters embossing folder. Okay. I have a 2 1/4 by 2 3/4 piece of white to stamp on. I have a 2 1/2 by 3-inch piece of basic gray. That'll be our layer behind that. I have a piece, this is actually 6 inches, I didn't cut it down. 1 7/8 by 5.5 inch of the silver and gold 6x6 designer series paper. I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of white. And I have my card base, which is 5.5 by 8.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. Now, if you wanted to run your ribbon all the way around the entire thing and tie your bow on the front, you wouldn't need this extra piece. I just chose to do it this way so I could save a little bit of ribbon. Okay, so let's get started. Let's do our stamping first, I think. Bring in this piece, and this is 2 1/4 by 2 3/4. The first thing I'm going to do is bring in this hill and the basic gray ink. And I want the hill part to go up on this left side. And I want it to just hang off the edge just a little bit. So it's about maybe 1/2 inch from the bottom of the card, like that. Okay. Now I'm going to come in with Evening Evergreen. And the trees. And I'm going to stamp that over here on the left-hand side. I want to make sure I leave enough room for my sentiment, so make sure that middle tree is grounded. Okay. And I'm going to bring in Real Red. little birdie. I'm going to stamp it on the top of this tree. I'm going to stamp one over here on this one just in case I want to cut it out. I'll show you, it's not really necessary, but it just added a little bit of something. Now I could stamp the sentiment in the gray if I wanted at this point. Actually, I think I will. Instead of bringing in the memento. And you'll see you didn't need to cut the stamp like I did, because you're going to stamp it all the way over to the right hand side, so that wouldn't be stamping anyway, but I just cut it off because I'm probably not going to use that part. Oh, I like that. Okay. Now, let's set this aside for a minute. And bring in our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And I want to emboss that piece, so I need layer 1, which is my base. And then for 3D embossing folders, I need layer 4, because these are, let's see, 3D embossing folders. Okay, so I'm going to put that cardstock in there. This pattern, it doesn't really have to be straight, but I'm going to put my 4 plate on, run that through. Okay, and I end up with that. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. Okay. Now I might as well take the moment and die cut that little bird in case we decide we need it. So for that I need plate 1 and 2 plates. What did I do with it? There it is. My little birdie. Oops, I forgot to put a plate underneath it. Don't want to cut into that base plate. Die in my magnetic bowl so I don't lose it. There's my little birdie. Put that in that bowl as well. Okay, so we're done with this. Alright, we can assemble this card. It's got all of our pieces. So I'm going to take the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of white. I'm going to take the 1 7/8 by 5 1/2 inch piece of the Designer Series paper. And I'm going to adhere this to the front of my, at the bottom. Making sure that this edge and this bottom edge are lined up. Come in with my snips. I'm going to trim this off, even with the edge of the paper. You could use your die cutting machine or your trimmer. Now this piece here is going to get mounted here. I'm going to try to keep an even border from the top and the two sides. Too much glue in that right now. The lid and the bottom, it's making it difficult to get the bottle out of there. Okay. Now I'm going to take this piece that I stamped and the 2.5 by 3 inch piece of basic gray, and I'm going to layer those together, and I'm going to use dimensionals. Now I know it's going to be 2 dimensionals high, so for this layer I'm going to put them in a little bit from the corners. And I'll show you why in a minute. Center that on this basic gray piece. Okay, now I'm going to put the dimensionals in the corners on this side, as close to the corners as I can without them hanging off. Okay. Oops, before we put that on, we need to put our ribbon on. And I'm using the shimmer ribbon. It's the gray granite shimmer ribbon. So I'm going to take a piece a little bit longer than our 5.5 inches, so it's like 7.5 inches. I'm bringing my glue dots. I'm going to put a glue dot on the back, like both ends. Just make sure you don't accidentally flip it over and get glue dot on the wrong side. I'm going to cover this bottom edge here, so it's going to go right over that, up to the edge of that paper there that we embossed. I just liked that a little bit nicer. And this is where I was saying, if you didn't want to have this additional layer, if you were building this on the front of your card, you would need to wrap it all the way around so you didn't have these raw ends on the inside of your card. I struggle with getting it tight that way, so that's why I chose to put this extra layer. Tie my bow. I do a much better job keeping the ribbon tight and pretty when I do it this way. Okay, now let's go ahead and adhere this. We want it to hang off the bottom here, so it's going to be down this bottom corner a little bit. Okay, the reason we move those dimensionals so that when it goes through the meter, it's still only going to be one level high, because they're not going to be stacked on top of each other. Okay, now that little birdie. Come on. For this one, I think I'm going to use a glue dot instead of a dimensional. We'll see what the difference is. I'll give you a little bit of dimension, but not too much. I think I like it better with the dimensional, so let's go ahead and add a baby dimensional. I'll use this glue dot on the ribbon. Let's add a second one. The ribbon will go right over here. And one of these tiny dimensionals. I'm going to add them on there, I want them to be popped. Otherwise, I would have just left them without that on there. There we go. Now we can mount this to the front of our card. It's going to be the same size as the front of the card, or it should be. There we go. There's the card we just made together. Here's the one I did previously. Well, thank you so much for joining me today at Jamie's Craft Table. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you can find a little bit of time to play with some stamps, ink, and paper.